Welcome to the channel and episode 6 of Churches of My Childhood. This is the Church of St Nicholas, set in idyllic countryside in the small village of Nether Winchendon in Buckinghamshire, just a couple of miles from the last church in this series. And what a different vibe this church gives. This was another church we would visit as kids out on our bike rides. And this one is even more remote as the village is found at the end of a little country lane. The tower, which was rebuilt in the 15th century, houses 6 bells, which were restored in 1980. The oldest bell in the tower is dated 1620. It's a beautiful looking church. It's a real shame the English flag isn't flying proud. And that's something I really think these churches need to start doing again. The clock with its single hand and blue exterior face was placed in the church in 1772 by a Jane Beresford of Nether Winchendon House. It's a fine example of an early 18th century clock, of which only about 6 remain in the country. The south entrance porch dates unchanged from the 15th century and has the remains of a holy stoop inside. The carving of St Nicholas hangs above the door. Inside the church, it feels bright, warm and inviting. You can tell that because I'm happy to close the door in this church. Like the church in Upper Winchendon, this is a Grade 1 listed building and it has been relatively untouched since the medieval period. The difference is this one feels more loved and the door is open every day. I think this makes a tremendous difference to the vibe of the whole church. I feel that these churches are almost alive, and if they're not used and cared for, it really shows. You'll notice that we have box pews inside, dating from the 18th century. Victorians weren't keen on these, so it's fairly unusual to see so many that survived in this church. Also, we have this amazing triple-decker pulpit dated from 1613. As you walk inside the chancel, you'll find lots of really interesting marks, and some of these are believed to be actual Crusader crosses. There's been a church here at least as far back as the 11th century. Most of what you see today is early 13th century, but there are ancient stones in the lower sections of the tower which come from the Saxon building. And before people question me on this information comes direct from the church itself, not something I've just made up. If you get the chance to visit the church, you'll find lots of these marks, and there's some really interesting ones in the porch as well. Back to the chancel, the Victorians added these tiles, one of the small changes they made, but I personally love this style. The lovely brightness of the church is largely due to the absence of any large areas of stained glass. However, the glass you will find is very interesting, and some dates back to the 13th century. Just outside the altar, there's this really interesting memorial to a Lieutenant Colonel Francis Tyringham Higgins Bernard, which is a bit of a mouthful, and it's a 20th century version of a medieval knight's tomb. This is a really interesting memorial and it has ties to North America, so please pause that and try and make sense of it. There's some interesting brass plaques on the wall and actually on the floor too. And mixed in with the Victorian tiles, some older ones. This one is from 1723 and 1705. And on the other side, some even older ones, 1603, 1629, and 1638. I absolutely love to see history like this inside these churches. Interestingly, the original pitched roof was removed in the 18th century and replaced with a lead roof at very shallow pitch. The nave gables were left standing proud of the roof, giving the church a derelict air, and it was for a long time known as the church with no roof. Eventually, the lead roof deteriorated and the present roof was erected in 1975 with the original pitch. On the south wall, another really interesting memorial that dates to the 1600s. It's really interesting, so please do pause these parts of the videos. The reason I don't focus too long on it is because it will make the videos just far too long and people lose interest. This window is really interesting and has fragments of ancient glass. Looks like the Lamb of God there and Mary with Jesus. Most of this is the 13th and 14th century. Also, I think a couple of these are from the 17th century and is actually Flemish glass. There's a couple of ledger stones in the nave floor. This one is in memory of Sarah Dewberry, who died the 28th of May 1780, aged 42. And Mrs. Jane Thorpe, daughter of Edward Dewberry, who departed this life April the 24th, 1814, aged 86 years. At the West End, you'll find the Musicians Gallery and you'll see the coats of arms on the wall. This is believed to be from the reign of George IV. This is also where the organ is. Now, in the old churches, you would have had this kind of thing above the rood screen, and it would have been the rood loft, and there's no sign of one in this church, although it would have most certainly had one in the past. The organ was given to the church by a Colonel Frank Bernard, and the Bernard family seem to be very important for this church. High up on the north wall, you'll find the Lord's Prayer and the Ten Commandments. I'm not sure if this was always this high because it's quite hard to read from down here. The font comes from the 15th century, is octagonal in shape, and it has the same moulding as the chancel arch. Heading into the tower, you'll find this beautiful floor that comes from the Saxon period, so it's well over 1,000 years old. If you're wondering what all these numbers are, these are the different sequences the bell ringers use. And believe me, bell ringing isn't an easy thing to do. I can't resist having a little peek upstairs. It looks like they've discovered some wall paintings, and I'm sure the whole church will be covered in them, hidden away underneath the whitewash. Let's head back outside and have a quick look around the graveyard. There seems to be a lot of the Reed family buried inside this graveyard. I found at least 9 graves, and the oldest one dates back to 1783. His name was Cousins Reed, an unusual name, and reportedly he had 20 children. He was a church warden at this church and also a local farmer. He was 76 when he died, and it sounds like he lived a very interesting life. Another interesting person buried here was a Sir Thomas Bernard. In 1816, he served as High Sheriff of Buckinghamshire, and he was also a Member of Parliament in the 1850s. I guess he is family to the lieutenant who is buried inside the chancel. I believe this is his family grave. He had one son, David, who died in 1853, just 23 years old. He was a captain in the Bucks militia and also a magistrate for the county. This grave is very hard to read now, like a lot of others this age. I'd love to see them get restored so they can be read in years to come. I must say, this church is in a really good condition, and the graveyard is well looked after, which is so nice to see. It's definitely a church you should visit if you get the chance. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. The next one's going to come really soon, and it's from the church in the village of Long Crendon.